Sri Lanka to hold 51% stake of the East Container Terminal. India's Adani Group and other factions to hold a 49% stake. President issues a breakdown on how the ownership of the ECT will be distributed. Pillayan acquitted and released from Joseph Pararajasingham murder case. Ranjan Ramanayaka to legally lose parliamentary seat in 6 months, says the National Election Commission. Individual infected with the new variant of COVID-19 discovered from Sri Lanka. Ranil Wickremesinghe to remain as the leader of the United National Party. Akila Viraj Karyavasam replaces Ravi Karunanayake as the assistant leader of the UNP.
A very good evening. I'm your anchor for tonight, Tharshi Kumar Singha, taking a look at your lead story this evening. 5 suspects, including Sivanesature Chandrakant and alias Pillayan, were acquitted today over the case filed against the murder of former parliamentarian Joseph Pararajasingham.
The case was called up in the presence of Batticaloa High Court Judge D.S. Susedasan today. On the 11th of this month, the Attorney General's Department informed court that it will not proceed with the case filed against Pillayan and the other suspects. Accordingly, the Batticaloa High Court ordered the 5 suspects to be acquitted and released over the murder case. Former parliamentarian Joseph Pararajasingham was shot dead on the 25th of December 2005.
Sivanesature Chandrakanthan, who was acquitted and released by the court, attended a media briefing in Batticaloa today. The Batticaloa High Court acquitted and released me. The Good Governance government took revenge from me. I was involved in clean politics. They did this to me, who was a chief minister and also member of the provincial council. This was a gift given to me by those who came to power in 2015 through the Good Governance government. I was hopeful. I have no connection to this case. I have not even seen Joseph Pararajasingham. I saw him once from afar. I have not voted for him either. Neither do I have a political connection. Those from Ranjan Ramanayaka's faction claim I was released and he was imprisoned. The extent to which he insulted the legal profession was proven through his voice recordings. They are attempting to create a myth, saying that the president released me through his influence. We filed an appeal claiming a case cannot be heard based on the testimonies provided by just 2 people. The Batticaloa High Court considered the facts and released me.
The National Election Commission said that parliamentarian Ranjan Ramanayake, who has been sentenced to 4 years rigorous imprisonment, will legally lose his parliamentary seat in 6 months.
If a person is convicted of an offence punishable with imprisonment for a term less than 2 years and has completed serving 6 months in prison, he will lose his parliamentary seat. But he will have to serve time for 6 months for this to happen. Individuals will not have to serve time in prison in the event of suspended sentences. This law will not apply to such individuals as they have not served more than 6 months in prison. Therefore, a parliamentarian will lose his seat only after serving 6 months in prison. Once that happens, the member of his party with the next highest preferential votes will be allowed to occupy the seat.
Will Ranjan Ramanayake be allowed to attend parliamentary sittings during the first 6 months?
No, that depends on the Parliament and the Prisons Department. A review has not been filed against this sentence. Therefore, he has been imprisoned. Due to this reason, I don't think he will be allowed to attend parliamentary sessions, but it will require 6 months for him to lose the parliamentary seat.
In one of your top stories today, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa says Sri Lanka will hold a 51% stake of the East Container Terminal at the Colombo port and that the remainder would allow companies such as the Adani Group of companies in India to make investments. The President made these claims when he met with port trade unions today.
The meeting saw the participation of representatives from 23 port trade unions and the head of the Presidential Task Force on Economic Revival and Poverty Eradication, Basil Rajapaksa. The President had emphasized to the port trade unions not to hold any reservations about the East Container Terminal development project and had informed them to submit their ideas and proposals for the benefit of the project. The President had pointed out that the previous government had signed an agreement to sell off the East Container Terminal to India. The President had gone on to note that the previous government was planning to obtain a loan from Japan to purchase the necessary equipment for the development of the terminal. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa said that following the discussions his government held with India, the two countries came into agreement to vest 51% of the East Container Terminal with the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. At the meeting, the President had emphasized the sovereignty and independence of Sri Lanka will not be tarnished through the investment that will be carried out in the country. Representatives of the Port Trade Union expressed the following views after today's meeting with the President.
The President has told us many important details about the ongoing agreement regarding the East Container Terminal between us and India. He explained about the issues revolving around geopolitics, economy and how much of a loss we will incur when we lose our 66% of transshipments if we do not hand over the East Container Terminal to India. However, that was not our stance. We could not come to an agreement with the President. We requested the President to provide us with a chance to discuss with the committee to look into concerns connected with development of the ECT before a final discussion is reached on this. The President gave clear instructions to put a stop to that and instructed Minister Rohitha Abegunawardena to let us carry out discussions expeditiously. The discussion was unsuccessful. The President's stance during the meeting was that Sri Lanka Ports Authority will hold a 51% stake of the East Container Terminal and the remaining 49% will be given to private entities. He asked us to submit our proposals based on that fact.
The
importance of today's discussion is that everyone came to a common platform to dismiss false remarks and told trade unions to avoid opposing attempts that are being made to vest 49% of the terminal with India while granting the Sri Lanka Ports Authority a 51% stake. That seems to be the government's policy. Do not try to deceive the people of this country any further. They must avoid disowning at least a tiny portion of the East Container Terminal at the Colombo port.
Our greatest national resource is the sea that surrounds us. Over 8 times the size of our landmass. Let's proudly call it what it is. The Sea of Sri Lanka.
A silent protest was organized by the General Collective of the Opposition under the theme Protect Freedom of Speech at the Independence Square this evening. MPs representing the Samagi Jana Balawega and representatives of many civil organizations took part in the silent protest. MP Harin Fernando used his freedom of expression and said what he wished to say. Those are the views of a public representative. We highly condemn it if any opposition is conveyed towards those views and if people are aggravated by those remarks. As the Samagi Jana Balawega, we will launch a struggle to safeguard the freedom of speech of representatives of the public as well as the general public. The opposition leader expressed his views about now imprisoned MP Ranjan Ramanayaka. What we have is nothing but deep regret. When you carefully read the article numbers 89, 91 and 105 of the Constitution, there is no possibility that MP Ranjan Ramanayaka could lose his seat in Parliament. We will stand for him and we will take democratic, constitutional and legal steps to secure his seat in Parliament.
Meanwhile, the Samagi Jana Balawega has addressed a letter to the Speaker on the need to protect the freedom of speech of all parliamentarians. The Samagi Jana Balawega pointed out that all parliamentarians enjoy a legal right to express their opinion. The letter sent by the opposition party adds that the response made by the President to the remarks made in Parliament by MP Harin Fernando takes the form of a threat and goes against the values of freedom of speech.
The Inter-University Students' Federation convened a joint media briefing with the trade unions and civic groups in Colombo today. The media briefing centered around the protests involving the Students' Federation yesterday.
We have clearly understood that the government's conduct is not similar to what was promised before the election. Just as the president said, we are witnessing the fake conduct of many individuals. The people will face problems that are of a greater magnitude. They will have to fight against several issues in the education, health and trade union sectors. The government has shown us a sign of how it would respond to such agitations. They are afraid of us voicing concerns. The government is afraid to see us taking to the streets for our demands. They are afraid to see the attention of society being drawn towards them.
I believe that the government is issuing dangerous signals that would allow state officials to break any law in the country. They seem to be telling state officials that the politicians would protect them as long as they abide by their instructions. The government's conduct also tells state officials to listen to its directives and that the country's laws are irrelevant, while implying that they are the law and that state officials would be protected if they listen to the government's instructions. This message has gone to the police as well. We have seen such incidents taking place during the previous administration as well. But this has aggravated under the government of the Rajapaksas.
We remember before the SLPP came into power, they convened a massive meeting at the Batramulla junction by closing off roads in the vicinity. Did such events take place by obtaining permits? When they were not in power, they used to stage protests and organize many public gatherings without obtaining permits. But now obtaining permits has become mandatory. This country now has a leader who recently declared that he has two characters and that he would display the character as per his wishes. I wish to tell him that if attempts are made to bury the values of democracy, the government will lose the support of people who supported them. The SLPP is assuming that they can retain the votes of those who voted them into power. I wish to remind that there is a force behind the Sri Lanka Freedom Party that advocates for democracy. Although they do not practice democracy, the supporters of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party have a value for democracy. Therefore, they will not agree with this conduct. Do not act in an undemocratic fashion, assuming that the people have given the go-ahead to do that.
The people of this country will have to take to the streets in the future. We can see that life has become difficult as the country's resources are being sold. At the same time, we know that the country's forest and environmental resources are depleting as well. This will definitely prompt residents to hit the streets. Therefore, we will have to defeat attempts that are being made to deprive the people of their democratic right to speech and stage demonstrations as well.
The Central Bank of Sri Lanka today advertised competitive bids for the sale of development bonds worth $200 billion.
According to the central bank, Sri Lanka will issue development bonds with a maturity period of 1 year, 1 year and 3 months, 2 years, 2 years and 3 months, and 4 years under a fixed interest rate. Foreign citizens and entities, non-resident Sri Lankans, dual citizens, holders of personal foreign currency accounts, licensed specialized banks, licensed finance companies, and companies that have entered into an agreement with the Board of Investment are among the eligible investors. The move undertaken by the central bank to issue development bonds worth $200 million against a backdrop in which the country has a massive amount of foreign debt to be settled this year.
We hope to address the weaknesses in the economy by streamlining foreign borrowing and project lending. We look forward to attracting unprecedented FDI inflows in the coming year and the preceding years as well. We are holding discussions with the banks of friendly nations to increase our reserves through currency swaps and other mechanisms.
We have to settle $6.8 billion in foreign debt inclusive of interest in 2021. The debt amounts to $5.3 billion, while the interest is worth $1.5 billion. Our government has decided to depend on local sources to obtain debt.
Ajit Niwad Cabral spends a lot of time in Parliament. He answers questions in the morning and then delivers a speech in the evening. In his address, he claims that Sri Lanka does not require the assistance of any entity, including the IMF. He also goes on to claim that the government has done a splendid job in the economic front and that the rupee has been stabilized. Yesterday, co-cabinet spokesman Udaya Gammanpila came out and told foreign lenders that it would be a great help if they can roll over the debt.
It would be a great help if you can roll over the debt.
But the reality is that the interest rate stands at 31% in the secondary market. If that is the case, then it indicates that the trust placed on our country to offer loans has dropped drastically. Which entity will be willing to lend money knowing that the country will not be able to repay it? So who is telling the truth? Is it Nivad Cabral, the State Minister for Money and Capital Market, who makes remarks in Parliament? Or is it Minister Udaya Gamanpilla, who comments as the core cabinet spokesperson? Today's papers have carried an advertisement seeking to obtain $200 million. Whom are they trying to deceive by conducting themselves in such a manner?
$1,200,000 ණයට ගන්න ඇඩ්වර්ටයිස්මන්ට් එකක් දාලා තියෙනවා අද පත්තරේ. කාවද මේ රවට්ටන්න හදන්නේ?
ආණ්ඩුව කියන සංඛ්‍යාලේඛනය අපිට පිළිගන්න බෑ.
We cannot accept the figures released by the government. We can observe that at least 1,040 billion would be spent on settling the interest connected to debt. At the same time, the government slashed down on tax revenue to protect their henchmen. This includes the fraud on sugar imports carried out by a company named Wilmer. They allowed a single company to defraud 50 rupees per kilo of imported sugar. This caused a loss of at least 10 billion to the country. They allowed their henchmen to line their pockets with these funds. The individual linked to this fraud paid a large amount of ransom in the construction of the Shangri-La Hotel. A fraud of coconut oil and cigarettes has also taken place. These incidents portray a breakdown of trust in the country's economy.
පේනවා ආර්ථිකය පිළිබඳ මෙවැනි දෑ සිදු වෙනකොට එහි විශ්වාසනීයත්වය බිඳ වැටෙනවා මෙවැනි ක්‍රියාදාම වලින් තවදුරටත්.
What is the sugar scam? According to a complaint lodged by the Janata Vimukti Peramuna with the Criminal Investigation Department, the loss caused by the scam stands at 10 billion rupees. On the 13th of October 2020, the government reduced the special commodity levy on a kilogram of imported sugar from 50 rupees to 25 cents. On the 2nd of November, an importer brought down 26,000 metric tons of sugar and another 37,000 metric tons on the 25th of November. The importer in question had continued to bring down up to 100,000 metric tons using the benefit of the tax concession. Meanwhile, the government imposed a maximum retail price of 85 rupees for sugar, causing difficulties for other importers who imported sugar under the levy for 50 rupees to sell their stocks. The government had then decided to increase the special commodity levy on sugar up to 40 rupees on the 27th of October. As the market levy cannot be amended within a month of altering the rate, the government issued import control licenses for the importation of sugar. Sugar imported from the 30th of October to the 22nd of November under the 25-cent levy were not released to the market, while sugar imported using these licenses from the 22nd of November onwards was subject to a 25-cent levy. According to the complaint filed by the JVP, those who imported the sugar for the 25-cent levy received a benefit amounting to 10 billion rupees.
අදානි සමාගම ගත්තට පස්සේ ඒ අදානි සමාගමේ දේශීය නියෝජිතයා විදියට ඉන්නේ සදාක් අබ්දුල් කාදර්.
Sajak Abdul Qadir has been appointed as the local agent of the Adani Group since the handover. He is also a close friend of the Rajapaksa family, a friend who is close enough to attend their private family functions. Pyramid Wilma is another firm that works closely with the Adani Group. The local agent of Pyramid Wilma is Sajad Mauzoon. Sajad Mauzoon was involved in the previous fraudulent activities regarding the importation of sugar and was also a part of the Viatmaga movement. In addition to that, he was also involved in selling lands to Shangri-La as well.
ඔහු වියත්මගෙත් හිටියා. ඔහු අර ශැංගිලා එකට ඉඩම විකුණන එකටත් සම්බන්ධයි. ඔහුත් රාජපක්ෂ පවුලේ ඊටාම සමීප හිතව. ඉතින් මේ මෙතන
The administration of the government is being carried out by a few racketeers. We did not expect a president who falls under the control of racketeers. The expectations of 6.9 million people who voted for the president due to his strong conduct as the defense secretary have not been fulfilled. The expectations continue to fail by the day. A flight from Ukraine arrived in the country yesterday as well, with about 156 tourists on board. We wish to reiterate that the economy of Ukraine is in a very bad state. Therefore, the tourism industry in our country cannot be uplifted by bringing down tourists from Ukraine. I saw media reports indicating that a foreigner in Sri Lanka has been identified with the new strain of COVID-19. What would be the situation if it starts spreading among the community?
The worst disease that can grip a nation is corruption. And the essential vaccine to fight it is the truth. News First. The truth as it is.
According to the Department of Immunology and Molecular Sciences at the University of Sri Lanka, a COVID-19 patient infected with the new variant of the virus has been detected in Sri Lanka. The Director of Operations at the Department of Immunology and Molecular Sciences at the University of Jayawardhanapura, Professor Chandima Jeevandara, confirmed this after a sample tested at the department detected the new variant of the virus.
We tested the samples that came to us in the past month and we detected a mutation that is quite similar to the variant that is found in the UK. This was further confirmed after we contacted several foreign laboratories.
We do not know how many people have come to Sri Lanka without confirming that they are infected with the new variant. Also, we do not know how much this variant has spread across the country. There are no proper scientific facts to back any of this. All of this has to be taken into consideration when authorities decide to reopen schools. This variant spreads faster. Even though this new strain has less complications, a large number of people could be infected by the virus. Therefore, we could see severe symptoms and a rise in deaths due to this.
Someone must have decided that they have to test the tourists who have come from the UK just to detect the variant that is found in the UK. Who has told the Ministry of Health that this new variant is only found in the UK? Just because this was identified in the UK, we cannot name this as a UK variant. That variant can enter the UK from India or even Russia. Sometimes it can be a variant that we cannot detect through PCR testing as well.
Close allies of the government has made a business out of COVID-19. This is a serious issue. The government itself has confirmed that more than 1,000 Ukrainian tourists have arrived in Sri Lanka. The tourists who came in the first and the second batches tested positive for COVID-19 upon arrival in Sri Lanka. The first flight carried 185 passengers and 3 passengers were tested positive. However, the rest of the passengers were not quarantined following this. There is no one law in the country when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic. There is only a dual law.
Udhyanga Veeratunga, you cannot develop the tourism industry by bringing in beggars. You have to do something that will make dollars flow into our country. The responsible ministers in the government also do not speak up in this regard. There is no point of them acting in a cowardly manner. They have to advise the president saying that this is not a good thing to do. I do not know to whom Udhyanga Veeratunga is reporting to. If you are bringing people down, bring tourists who will make investments here in Sri Lanka and not beggars.
All safety measures are being taken when tourists come to the country. We have prevented all the possible ways this could spread to other people through this person. So there is no need for unnecessary panicking about this issue.
We are crossing over to a short commercial break. More news on the other side.
Struggling to find reliable plumbers, electricians, gardeners and other service providers? Bellboys got you covered.
The additional district judge today rejected an application made by George Stewart Health Private Limited for the action filed against MTV Channel Private Limited to be transferred to the court number 6. Accordingly, the case was called up in the presence of District Judge Rashanta Godavela at court number 1.
When the case was called up earlier on the 8th of January, President's Counsel Romesh De Silva, appearing for George Stewart Health Private Limited, made an application for the case to be transferred to Additional District Judge Sandun Vithana on the premise that it was Additional District Judge Sandun Vithana who issued the ex parte injunction order and later extended it on the 7th of December 2020. President's counsel Udita Egalaheva, appearing for MTV, strenuously objected to the application to transfer the case, stating that parties should not select the bench to suit their wishes, and informed court that the practice of permitting parties to select judges is a perverse practice that affects the independence of the judiciary. The President's counsel further submitted to court that after the 7th of December 2020, this case came up on 18th of December 2020, and that there was a specific order made by another additional district judge to take this case up before the District Judge of Colombo for inquiry, and on that date, no objections were raised by the plaintiff's counsel to take up this case in District Court Number 1. President's counsel Udita Egalaheva noted, therefore, in following the proper procedure, this case should rightly be taken up only in Court Number 1 before the said District Judge of Colombo and not be transferred to the Additional District Judge as requested by the plaintiff. Having heard submissions by both counsels on the 8th of January, the court made an order that when one party has made a request to transfer the case to another court, it is not correct for the judge to hear the case, stating that one party could allege bias against the judge. Purely for that reason, the learned judge ordered that the case be transferred to Additional District Judge Sandun Vithana. Thereafter, the case was taken up before Additional District Judge Sandun Vithana. Counsel for MTV, Udita Egalaheva, PC, informed the court that a few moments ago, when this case came up before Court Number 1, President's counsel Romesh De Silva, appearing for George Stewart Health Private Limited, had requested for the case to be taken up at Court Number 6. President's counsel Udita Egalaheva said he had vehemently objected to the plaintiff's application to transfer the case to Court Number 6 and stated that there is an order already made on 18th December 2020 to take this case up in Court Number 1, and therefore Court Number 6 should not hear the case. Accordingly, the Additional District Judge postponed the case to the 13th of January 2021. When the case came up before the Additional District Judge Sandun Vithana at Court Number 6, the judge questioned counsel appearing for MTV whether they continue to maintain their objections. Udita Egalaheva, PC, appearing for MTV, reiterated the same objections and said there was no change in his position. Considering the submissions, Additional District Judge Sandun Vithana made an order that the case will not be taken up at Court Number 6 and further ordered that the case will be transferred to Court Number 1. When the case was called up at District Court Number 1, District Judge Rashanta Godawela stated that the case can now proceed in District Court Number 1. President's counsel Romesh De Silva, appearing for George Stewart Health Private Limited, said he had no objections for the case to be taken up in the said court. However, citing he needed to seek instructions from his client, President's counsel Romesh De Silva, appearing for George Stewart Health Private Limited, requested for the case to be postponed to Monday, and thereby the district judge postponed the case to the 18th of January. Udita Egalaheva, President's counsel, Jivanta Jayatilaka, Niranjan Arul Pragazam, Damita Karunaratna, N.K. Ashokabaran, Miru Egalaheva and other counsels appeared for MTV Channel Private Limited, instructed by G.G. Arul Pragazam. Appearing for the plaintiff and for the interests of Dilip Javira, the chairman of the plaintiff company, was Romesh De Silva, PC, and Ruanta Kure, attorney at law.
British-born financier and a member of the Rothschild family, Nathaniel Rothschild, arrived in Sri Lanka last evening for a brief visit.
The 49-year-old is the heir apparent to the centuries-old European banking dynasty and the only son of Jacob Rothschild, the 4th Baron Rothschild. The Rothschilds' roots are deeply embedded in Sri Lanka, then Ceylon's history. The Rothschilds are close relatives of German Jewish brothers Maurice, Gabriel and Baron Solomon de Warm, who are tipped as the pioneers of tea planting in the island. Gabriel de Warm, one of their ancestors, was a candidate for the Legislative Council of Ceylon in the 1800s, while Maurice is credited to have brought tea plants from China to be cultivated in Sri Lanka. They owned some of the biggest and best cultivated coffee plantations in the island, and the de Warms prospered from trading coffee with Europe. But after the Great Coffee Blight in 1869, they replanted their estates with tea. They built up one of the largest tea plantations in the island, known as the Rothschild estate, which was named after their maternal grandfather, Mayor Amschel Rothschild, founder of the Rothschild banking dynasty.
Directing your attention once again towards the political arena of the country, the post of the assistant leader of the United National Party that was held by Ravi Karunanayake was handed over to Akila Viraj Karyavasam today. The appointment was made based on a decision made by the party's working committee.
Akila Viraj Karyavasam was appointed as the assistant leader of the United National Party, replacing Ravi Karunanayake, who held the position. Palitharange Bandara was appointed to the post of General Secretary that was previously held by Akila Viraj Karyavasam. Meanwhile, Vajra Abeyawardene was appointed as the chairman of the United National Party. Navin Dissanayake will remain as the national organizer, while Ruwan Wijewardene will serve as deputy leader. Ranil Wickramasinghe will continue to serve as the leader of the United National Party.
ශක්තිමත් නායකත්වයක් මේ මොහොත වෙනකොටත් එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයට තියෙනවා. මම පැහැදිලිව එතුමා ඉන්නවනේ නායකත්වය.
It is clear that he is holding the post of leader. Our working committee decided that party leader Ranil Wickramasinghe should be sent to parliament as its representative. Our constitution also contains provisions on nominating the leader to parliament. Therefore, we have requested him to enter parliament.
ඒ පිළිබඳව අපි නායකතුමාට ඉතාමත්ම ඕනෑකමින් ඉල්ලීමක් කරා එතුමාට පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට යන්න කියලා.
Meanwhile, the European Union has announced the signing of 3 grants worth 8.26 billion rupees to support Sri Lanka's justice sector, help improve food safety and strengthen efforts to mitigate climate change.
4.16 billion rupees was granted to the Sri Lanka Justice Support Program to provide capacity development and technical assistance. 2.31 billion rupees to improve food safety, quality and promote organic agriculture. 1.79 billion rupees to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the industry sector project implemented by UNIDO. The grants were signed on behalf of the government of Sri Lanka by Secretary to the Treasury S.R. Atigala.
In more good news, the United States has donated a mobile testing unit to the regional health services in Monaragala as part of the effort to fight COVID-19 pandemic in Sri Lanka.
The mobile unit can administer PCR tests and provide vital health services to 100 people daily in Monaragala communities hit hard by the pandemic. The mobile unit enables safe sample collection by avoiding direct contact and can be used in the future for testing other commutable diseases, including dengue. The donation was funded by the US government's development arm, the US Agency for International Development, through its Social Cohesion and Reconciliation project.
Tomorrow's Thai Pongal festival is a spiritual day of celebration for Hindus around the world. As Hindus mark the beginning of a new year, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson issued a special message in line with the festival.
To our fantastic British Tamil community and to Tamils around the world, I wish you a very happy Thai Pongal. And as you gather together with your family and friends, I believe there is so much to celebrate and to look forward to. Of course, traditionally this day of worship celebrates the arrival of the harvest. But I also want to celebrate the contribution of Tamils in the UK. From building businesses that boost our economy, teaching children in our schools, treating patients in our NHS, caring for the vulnerable in our society, and much, much more. Your fantastic contribution makes a real difference. So let me say an enormous thank you to our wonderful Tamil community and wish you every enjoyment of the festivities today and over the coming days. And may your year ahead be just as overflowing with happiness, joy and prosperity.
20 new members were introduced to the K9 unit of the Sri Lanka Air Force today. The K9s have received specialized training in explosives and narcotics detection, as well as specialized training in elite security duties, search operations and rescue duties. A demonstration of the animal skills was held at the Sri Lanka Air Force base camp in Katunayaka today. We wrap up tonight's news with the footage from this demonstration. I'm Tarusha Kumar Singh along with our sign language interpreter for today, Brandy Cruz. Good night.